crazy weekend for foreign policy. Donald Trump is wreaking havoc in Latin America. Number one, Donald Trump is demanding that Nicolas Maduro resign or else. So he's ready to go to war with Venezuela. Two, Pete Hegseth, who is a part of Donald Trump's administration, is possibly facing some type of charge for war crimes. He's been accused of war crimes, also to do with Venezuela in the Caribbean. Three, Donald Trump is now in process of trying to pardon Juan Hernandez, who is an actual narco in Honduras. I've seen crazier things happen before, but ladies and gentlemen, Donald Trump is after Latin America. Let's go ahead and get started with this statement here from Fox News. It's been a crazy weekend. I know a lot of people with their families for Thanksgiving weekend, but this all went down while everyone was hanging out with the fam. Exit or else. The Trump administration delivered a stern ultimatum to Nicolas Maduro to leave Venezuela immediately before Trump announced the country's airspace would be closed. The warning was reportedly delivered in a phone call with Caracas and offered guarantee evacuation for Maduro, his wife, and their son, but only if the dictator agreed to resign on the spot. Ladies and gentlemen, telling Nicolas Maduro to flee his own country. Here we go again with U.S. intervention, with the U.S. government overthrowing leaders to install the Western puppets that they want. We have to remember Nicolas Maduro does not want to work alongside with Israel. He made that very clear. Marina Kochina, the woman who just received the Nobel Peace Prize, who's basically a traitor to her own people in Venezuela, she wants Venezuela to work alongside Israel and to be a part of the Zionist project. So does everybody see where this is headed? Two, to tell a country that you are closing their airspace. By the way, the airspace was closed to airlines as well. This is overreach like no other. So imagine calling Nicolas Maduro a dictator, and you are actually dictating on the world stage. Let's get into this, folks. We got to get into what this is really about. Again, Israel was part of this. So part of that's foreign policy, the geopolitics of it all, this greater expansion of Israel. But also we cannot forget that Venezuela has a lot of oil. And ultimately, Donald Trump is after that oil. He is now going so far as to say that Nicolas Maduro is a part of the drug cartel. I cannot make this up. Let's get into this clip here.
A bold move by the Trump administration declaring Venezuela's president, Nicolas Maduro, and his government among the world's most dangerous terrorist organizations. The announcement allows President Trump to move in on Venezuela, but when it will happen is still uncertain. Here's D.C. Bureau Chief Ben Kennedy.
Tonight, the U.S. has formally marked Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro and his government allies as members of a foreign terrorist organization, accusing Cartel de los Soles of trafficking drugs into the states. On social media, South Florida Representative Maria Salazar said the Cartel of the Suns is officially recognized as a terrorist organization, exactly what Venezuelans have known for years.
So now, everyone's a terrorist now. Everyone's a terrorist that doesn't want to go along with the U.S. foreign policy. So does everybody see the pattern here? For years, they have told you that these other countries are the problem, but we're the country that wreaks havoc on these other countries. We're the country that overthrows their leaders. We're the country that tells them you better do this or else. The U.S. government has been policing the world stage for decades. This didn't just happen overnight, didn't start with Donald Trump. But this is the same person who told you he wanted peace. This is why I continue to say, stop calling Donald Trump this peace president. He's not a peace president. He wasn't a peace president in his first term. But yet people believe this. I don't know why.
adding for too long the Maduro regime has financed narco-terrorism and tyranny in Venezuela and throughout our hemisphere. This move gives the Trump administration broader power to target and dismantle cartels and even expand authority to take action in Venezuela, like imposing fresh sanctions against Maduro's assets and infrastructure. Maduro has denied any personal involvement in drug running. In a statement, the Venezuelan government called the designation a ridiculous fabrication, writing this new maneuver will follow the same fate as previous and reoccurring aggressions against our country: failure.
We view the Maduro regime as being illegitimate, and the president has been very satisfied with the successful strikes against narco-terrorists.
Imagine if another country said that we are going to overthrow the president of the United States. That would be insane, right? But the US government has been doing that for years. Now, they told you that the war in Iraq was about weapons of mass destruction. You found out years later that was not the case, that there were no weapons of mass destruction. But they used that as a reasoning. And now the reason that they're trying to use for Venezuela is they're trying to say, well, Nicolas Maduro is a part of this drug cartel. Donald Trump's entire reasoning falls apart because of the pardon that he wants to do for Juan Hernandez. It does not make any sense other than the fact that they want to overthrow these leaders that don't want to go along with U.S. foreign policy projects. And ultimately, they want the oil. Let's get into another clip about this, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, it has been a crazy weekend, but we are back.
A foreign terrorist designation is going to go into effect today for Venezuela's infamous Cartel de los Soles. The White House claims the group is directly tied to the Maduro regime and is responsible for drug trafficking into the U.S. So this move allows the Trump administration to, for instance, freeze assets tied to the cartel as it makes the case for military strikes against Venezuela. Over the weekend, 3 international airlines canceled flights from Venezuela as the FAA warns of a potentially hazardous situation. The idea of military action against Venezuela is something even the president.
We have to pause it here because we can't show the strike on the boat, but we'll bring it back. And this action here by Donald Trump is just absolutely, it's insane. And people were saying he deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. No, he doesn't. He made this deal with Gaza and Israel, which isn't a ceasefire, by the way. There were 2 Palestinian children that were killed over the weekend, over Thanksgiving weekend. They're still killing people in Gaza. They're still starving people in Gaza. So that was all a distraction. That whole plan of his was all a distraction so that he can divert his attention to Latin America and start wreaking havoc there. Now, this is not liked by both sides. This is another thing. Both sides are calling this out, not just the Democrats, despite what Donald Trump will tell you, but even Republicans as well. We'll go ahead and bring in Rand Paul here because he had something to say about this as well.
I think you'll see a splintering and a fracturing of the movement that has supported the president, because I think a lot of people, including myself, were attracted to the president because of his reticence to get us involved in foreign war.
Group chat is back. Sabrina, I know you've been following this for a long time. I do know people talk about Venezuela as a narco state, but I don't necessarily, it's not clear whether designating it as a former a cartel, what difference that could make. Can you talk about like what the administration is sort of thinking behind all this?
I mean, for the Trump administration, the designation opens up more options of what they can do in Venezuela and opens a broader justification for them doing things in Venezuela right now. But I think what's interesting, there's a lot of confusion about why exactly the Trump administration would want to get involved in Venezuela and is doing what it's doing. What we hear from the administration, the majority of the time, is the focus on the drug trafficking. And I think there's another piece, which is Trump himself has talked so much about migration patterns from Venezuela. So is there some type of interest in destabilizing Venezuela, ousting its leader, Nicolas Maduro, if there's a calculus that that would impact the region, and if that would impact bringing new leadership into the country?
Yeah, and then
let me add this part, because this is the piece I think a lot of people don't want to admit. When the U.S. government destroys these countries, implements more sanctions. We've had sanctions on Venezuela. He's talking about implementing more sanctions on Venezuela. Resign, Maduro, do this, otherwise I'm going to make your people suffer more. Sanctions kill people. Sanctions are an economic aspect of war. So I still consider that to be war. And when we talk about what is going to happen to the people in Venezuela, ultimately, that leads to more migration, because the more sanctions you put on the country, if he goes into, it sounds like he's trying to head into war into Venezuela. What do you think happens to the population, the civilians who are there? They are going to migrate. They are going to leave. And see, the same administration will complain about the border and they'll say all these people are coming in, but they never explain why. They never get to the geopolitics of it all. The reality is a lot of people don't want to leave their home. Yes, some people do want to come to the United States and achieve the American dream. But the reality is most people don't want to leave their home. But when you ruin their home, when you implement sanctions so much to the point that it makes pretty much the things that you need, food, gas, water, it makes those things unaffordable, you have no choice but to leave and try to go somewhere else where you can afford to live. Imagine if it were done to us. Imagine if it were done to us and all of a sudden gas was like, let's say $20 a gallon. All of a sudden, like bread and milk was, the prices were through the roof, which the prices are already increased anyway. But imagine if it was through the roof. Ultimately, people would try to leave. People would try to go elsewhere where they can afford to live. And that is what has been happening so much in Venezuela. Now, like I said, do some people want to come here to achieve the American dream? Absolutely. But you cannot sit up here and excuse what the U.S. government has done in these countries. And here we go again. Insane.
The Times, your paper of record, the Joint Chiefs Chairman Dan came to the Caribbean as the president is said to have reportedly approved plans for covert action there. And I think for the people within the MAGA movement who don't want to be involved in foreign wars, is this starting to walk and quack like a war?
Yeah, so you are seeing the tensions in MAGA just as you saw them just before the bombing of Iran in June. Now, in that case, it was a standoff bombing campaign. That's maybe what you see now against, in the coming days, against drug sites, maybe against military sites.
Yeah, against all those things, right? So again, we can't show the explosion here. But he's talking about that splinter that's happening within MAGA, like the people who really did not want any more wars, the people who wanted, the president of the United States to focus on Americans first. That's what he's diving into. And the reality is that segment of the base does still exist. And so you're seeing people like, whether it's been Candace, whether it's been Tucker, whether it's been Marjorie Taylor Greene, people vehemently come out against this and say, this is not what we voted for. And I would say that Donald Trump fooled a lot of people because he was already president in 2016. And no, he didn't start new wars, but he didn't stop the ones that were going either. Don't forget, he also implemented attacks on Syria during his first administration. People forget that. Also Somalia, right? So his hands are not clean. So we cannot forget these things, ladies and gentlemen.
Than as president of a country.
Right.
Now, it's not sure that cartel of the Suns actually exists. And that's
rather than a figure of speech.
Right.
Okay. And then meanwhile, I just want to say that people in the U.S. do want to know a little bit more about what's going on. They are hearing about deaths in these boat strikes. Just 24% believe the Trump administration has clearly explained their position on military action. And 76% believe that hasn't been done.
This is incompetence at its finest.
One of the big misconceptions or confusions points is that Donald Trump has gone so far in targeting fentanyl as a crisis. Fentanyl is a Chinese and a Mexican crisis that has very much less to do with Venezuela. So I think the American people are confused about how that campaign trail rhetoric matches up with these actions. And then also going to thinking broadly about the Trump administration. First, you had Gaza. He sort of, brokered that peace deal, wanted the Nobel. Now we have Russia, Ukraine. I think for a lot of people, this seems like the third opportunity for Donald Trump, opportunity being the key word, to sort of broker a crisis and solve it. Whereas if you look at polling, I think a lot of people don't want any more crisis to be brokered and solved. I think they want Trump to be focusing on domestic policy, the food stamp crisis we just went through, a government shutdown. This feels like an extracurricular thing for a lot of people.
And I think especially
There's no peace in Gaza. I have to make a correction there. But yeah, that splintering that's happening there in the MAGA base. We cannot forget the part about the oil. I want you to hear what this guy said here, who actually went to Iraq. Listen to this part here.
Venezuela, for those Americans who do not understand why we need to go in, basically for three reasons. You're in Fox Business. Venezuela, for the American oil companies, will be a field day, because it will be more than $1 trillion in economic activity.
Well, they're just saying the quiet part out loud.
Right out there in the open. That's what it's really about. You have too much oil. We want your oil. So you step aside and resign, or we're going to come in and we're going to start a war with you. That is colonialism at its finest. We are stealing resources from other countries. And the people there, it's like they have no say so. And then if the leader of that country chooses to say no and fight back, then all of a sudden this person is a dictator. I'm surprised they haven't come up with this one yet, but give it a number of days and they'll probably start telling you that Maduro is killing his own people. Where have we heard that one before? It's thievery. Like just taking from these people.
That was Republican Representative Maria Salazar admitting on national television that the party of no new wars is about to send our children to the slaughterhouse for big oil. As an Iraq war veteran, I feel like we've done this already. And this slip up is obviously not really being covered by right-wing media outlets. As we can see on the ground news bias distribution chart, only 17% of right-leaning media outlets are covering this. I love ground news. I use it to argue with my formerly MAGA father. That's right, formerly MAGA. Together, we analyze each story's biases and we use the blind spot feature. And that makes it almost impossible for us to stay inside of our algorithmic bubble.
He goes on about ground news. Ground news is pretty decent. They do that thing that he was just talking about, where they'll tell you like this leans left, this leans right, this is more neutral. They do that, but they're pretty decent. But yeah, people are staying in their own little bubbles. It's just, I can't believe that people, or some people are even believing this nonsense that is happening. And there's something else here. I wanted to show you guys this from the Gray Zone. This was something that they said recently about this effort of Latin American takeover is really ultimately what Donald Trump is trying to do.
Essentially, this isn't about terrorism, narco-terrorism. This isn't about drugs. It's about destroying the Latin American left. And not just in Cuba and Nicaragua, but in Brazil and Mexico, where Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum is facing right-wing protests dressed up as a Gen Z revolution. Which are just astroturfed, oligarch-funded protests where they're chanting against her being Jewish, but the ADL doesn't care because she's supportive of Palestine.
Yeah, that was the same issue with Mexico. And again, yeah, like she's not on the Israel, not down with the Israel agenda. She supports Palestine, and that's what he's doing. And ultimately, it's like more people need to pay attention to this. And again, it happened over Thanksgiving weekend, so I'm not sure a lot of people saw. And then there's part two. Now, Pete Hegseth, who's a part of the Trump administration, who was never qualified for that position. I warned people early on, this guy's not qualified. This is going to be a disaster. He is now being accused of war crimes in the Caribbean. Because remember when they were targeting those Caribbean boats and they said that those boats were coming from Venezuela and they were sending drugs into the United States and they had no proof of that. So they were killing innocent people. Well, there was that first strike, which we all knew about. Now it is being reported that there was a second strike where Pete Hegseth told them to kill them all. Cannot make this up, ladies and gentlemen. This is a big one for the Trump administration. It is not looking good. Lawmakers warn Hegseth may have committed war crimes following a second strike report. Let's get into a little bit of this here. And this is coming from both parties. Lawmakers from both parties raised alarm Sunday that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth may have committed a war crime following a report that he ordered a follow-on attack to kill survivors of a boat strike in September. The Washington Post reported last week that Hegseth authorized a highly unusual strike to kill all survivors of one of Trump's administration's attacks in recent months on boats, allegedly carrying drugs in international waters. Politico has not independently verified the Post reporting. So people that have been speaking out against this, Senator Chris Van Hollen, Tim Kaine, both of who sat on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, said Sunday that if accurate, such orders would rise to the level of war crimes. Let's go ahead and get into this clip here where they did confront Donald Trump about this.
Lawmakers from both sides of the aisle are demanding answers from the Trump administration about recent U.S. military operations in the Caribbean. This bipartisan scrutiny comes in the wake of new reporting from the Washington Post, claiming that during one attack on a boat suspected of smuggling drugs, a follow-up strike was ordered after the initial impact left some survivors on board. This is according to the Post, citing two sources with direct knowledge. They write, in a September 2nd strike, which is the first in the administration's ongoing offensive, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth gave a verbal command to kill everybody on the boat. After the
pause right here, to kill everybody on the boat. They said that Pete Hegseth said, kill them all. What does that sound familiar? Doesn't it sound similar to some of the rhetoric that you heard from Zionists about the Palestinians in Gaza to kill them all? You see, it's one accord. It's one accord, ladies and gentlemen. They don't give a damn. We are dealing with a ruthless mafia style government in this country. That's what this really is. A mafia. People are making deals under the table. People are making deals in back rooms. People are exchanging money, is exchanging hands to just do utter chaos, do whatever they want. And no one is stopping them. No one. And this is why I say, and I say this, and I said this before. Look, I have many criticisms of the Democratic Party. That being said, this is why I say Democrats are poised to win in 2028, because the havoc that has been wreaked from the Trump administration in particular, I just don't see how he comes. I don't see how they come back from this. Even if J.D. Vance decides to run in 2028, which he probably will, I don't really see how people come. A lot of people are upset, and not just people who are Democrats, not just people who are independent voters, but even people who voted for Donald Trump are not feeling what is happening. So this is a mafia style government, and Pete Hegseth is now being accused of war crimes. So you got our government being accused of war crimes, not the first time. You have Benjamin Netanyahu, obviously, who committed war crimes. Again, that's why I say it's one accord. One accord.
missile hit and the smoke cleared, two survivors were seen clinging to the wreckage. The paper goes on to report that the special operations commander overseeing the attack then ordered a second strike to comply with Hegseth's initial instructions. As the Post puts it, the two men were blown apart in the water. MS Now has not independently verified that report.
Again, of course, we can't show the boat strike, but this is the report that was coming out.
Congress are starting to push back. The top Republican and Democrat on the Senate Armed Services Committee said, quote, "We'll be conducting vigorous oversight to determine the facts related to these circumstances."
So this is, again, bipartisan. Donald Trump is going to tell you it's just the Democrats. It's not. You have Senator Roger Wicker, who's a Republican, and Senator Jack Reed, who's a Democrat. The committee has directed inquiries to the department, and we will be conducting vigorous oversight to determine the facts. So that's another doomsday thing here for the Trump administration. The fact that you have bipartisan support that, whoa, what they're doing here is incorrect. This is wrong. You can't just go just saying kill all these people.
And on the House side, the Armed Services Committee there echoed that vow, saying they're, quote, committed to providing rigorous oversight and are taking bipartisan action to gather a full accounting of the operation in question. Amid this new report and stepped-up scrutiny, Defense Secretary Hegseth is continuing to defend the strikes. He took to social media to denounce what he called fake news and fabricated, inflammatory and derogatory reporting. But he added that the strikes are intended to be lethal and kinetic, saying in part, quote, Biden coddled terrorists, we kill them.
Everything is fake news. If somebody's outing them, if somebody is telling the truth here, which I believe, if somebody's outing them, it's fake news. And he'll just dismiss it this way. This is absolutely disgusting. Just killing innocent people. And I'm willing to bet you they probably have proof. They probably have audio somewhere that they recorded to show that he did say that. This is what the U.S. government has been doing for years. It's just that it's out in the open now. War crimes were committed under Bush. War crimes were committed under Obama. But now, especially in this day and age of social media and people being a little bit more aware of geopolitics, now it's out in the open.
President Trump, meanwhile, had this to say yesterday when asked about reports of a second strike.
If there were a second strike that killed wounded in the first strike, are you?
Well, number one, I don't know that happened. And Pete said he did not want them. He didn't even know what people were talking about. So we'll look into it. But no, I wouldn't have wanted that. Not a second strike. The first strike was very lethal. It was fine, and if there were two people around. But Pete said that didn't happen.
Does that make you?
I have great confidence.
He's saying no second strike.
I don't know. I'm going to find out about it. But Pete said he did not order the death of those two men.
Let me just go ahead and tell you guys something, okay? Donald Trump is playing people. The president knows. So for Donald Trump to say, oh, I don't know about that. Pete said it didn't happen. It's not true. I don't know if there was a second strike. Like, he is literally playing people. Of course he knows. The president, that they're not doing things without the president's approval or the president knowing about these things. He knows. If one thing I think Donald Trump has been very skilled at, it's being a liar. It just say, oh, I didn't know about that. Oh, it's fake news. And people who worship him will just eat it up because they believe anything that he says. So now you see he's trying to distance himself there and say, well, I don't know anything about that. Oh, no, strike. What is that? So this is serious. This is serious here. Then there's part 3, which is that Donald Trump is now trying to pardon Juan Hernandez of Honduras, who was an actual narco. So at the same time that Donald Trump is telling you we're going after Venezuela because they're trafficking drugs and Nicolas Maduro is connected to cartel and he's narco, he is trying to pardon an actual narco in Honduras. I cannot make these things up. The ex-president whom Trump plans to pardon flooded America with cocaine. Juan Orlando Hernandez, whom Mr. Trump called a victim of persecution, helped orchestrate a decades-long trafficking conspiracy. It ravaged his Central American country. So this is who Donald Trump is trying to pardon right now. But he's telling you that he has to go after Venezuela because they are trafficking drugs. This guy trafficked cocaine into the United States. And many of you wondering why. There are elections that are happening right now in Honduras. This is why I said he's wreaking havoc on Latin America. It's not just about Venezuela. He's not going to stop there. Right now, there are elections happening in Honduras. And Donald Trump has already said who he wants to win that election. It's insane. I'm going to try to get someone to come on the show Tuesday evening to discuss those Honduras elections. Camilla She's a journalist. She's been reporting a lot on this so far on social media. She's been talking about what's happening there. But the U.S. government right now is interfering with elections in Honduras so that they can install their Western puppet. So this guy, Trump, says, oh, we're going to try to pardon him. Listen to this. He once boasted that he would stuff the drugs up the gringos' noses. He accepted 1 million bribe from El Chapo to offer cocaine shipments to pass through Honduras. A man was killed in prison to protect him. At the federal trial of Juan Hernandez in New York testimony, and evidence showed how the former president maintained Honduras as a bastion of the global drug trade. He orchestrated a vast trafficking conspiracy that prosecutors said raked in millions for cartels while keeping Honduras one of the Central America's poorest, most violent, and most corrupt countries. He went on to face drug trafficking charges. He was sentenced to 45 years in prison. But this is who Donald Trump wants to pardon. On Friday, President Trump announced that he would pardon Mr. Hernandez, who's 57, who said he was a victim of political persecution, though Mr. Trump offered no evidence to support that claim. It would be a head-spinning resolution to a case that, for prosecutors, was a pinnacle striking at the heart of a narco state. This is absolutely insane. So, and this is, I stress to people, please, please, please pay attention to what is going on out there in these global streets. It's absolutely insane what Donald Trump is doing. Polling shows right now in the United States. Do you think the U.S. should attempt to remove Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro from power? 76% said no. 24% said yes. That's for all of the voters. Republicans, 62% said no. 38% said yes. Independents, 79% no. 20% yes. Democrats, 88% no. 12% yes. That's from Marquette. So the American people are not in agreement with what Donald Trump is doing in Venezuela. I didn't think so much could happen over a weekend. Again, ask yourself what is in it for them, right? Overthrowing Maduro, getting access to that oil, that's one thing. 2, installing a Western puppet that is going to go along with Israel's greater plan, the Zionist agenda. That's 2. And he's trying to do the same thing in Honduras. They're not going to stop with Venezuela and Honduras. They're going to go venture into some of these other Latin countries as well. Brazil, hey, you probably next. So everybody's got to see this for what it is. We've got to push back on it, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a crazy weekend for geopolitics. It's been a crazy weekend also for domestic politics, as we've been covering what is happening here with the whole Afghan national situation. As I told you guys before, they are really trying to push and make people go along with their geopolitics, their agenda of taking over the world, destroying these countries, devastating these countries. And ultimately, what we really have is an empire that is dying, an empire that is falling apart. Rome is the best example. Empires don't remain empires forever. You get to the top and eventually you start to fall. And we are declining here in the United States. And I would argue that a big part of that is because we've put so much money and attention abroad with disrupting other countries, sending money to Israel instead of taking care of our infrastructure and people right here in the United States. So war with Venezuela is on the table. And it is absolutely insane that it could be possible that Donald Trump would be sending U.S. troops over to Venezuela to fight something that they would not be able to win. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.